You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, and you can't even cook that good. Look at you. You're black, you're poor, you're ugly, and you can't even cook that good. Hello, I'm Sheikah X. Welcome to my channel. Sheikah is an acronym that stands for Communicating Honesty and Kind Affirmation with the Torah. In this video, I'm going to do it in two parts, and I'm going to analyze my visit to Kentucky as I visited the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. Both of the museums are biblical museums started by Ken Ham. He also has a program called Answers in Genesis. And I just want to share my experience about the Creation Museum, about what I felt about the state of Kentucky, and how I felt about just overall both of the museums itself. The first museum I visited was the Creation Museum, and the second one was the Ark Encounter. Now I'm going to do these in two different videos. So this one I'm just going to deal with the creation story or the Creation Museum. And then the second part 2 video is going to be where I analyze the Ark Encounter, which is, the biblical account of Noah's Ark. Kentucky is very, 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 very scary at night. I tell you, the roads were just so dark. You couldn't see to the side of you. All you could see was just directly in front of you. No cars in back, no cars in front, no stop signs, no traffic lights. It was like pitch black. I tell you, I was scared. I thought I was lost. I'm like, I left the Ark Encounter. I'm like, where is everybody on this dark road? I was so glad to see a stop sign and cars moving. I didn't even know what to do. I wanted to scream like, yes, there are people. But I tell you, that is, I don't think Kentucky is right for me. I'm used to street lights and not long roads that look like they're deserted with nobody on them but me. So first of all, I just want to say I was really impressed. I was not disappointed. I think Ken Ham, they did a great job at depicting the biblical scenes that we have read about. And I was really impressed. I would definitely encourage you to go out and visit the Creation Museum. But there were some issues that I wanted to bring out about the Creation Museum. As beautiful as it was, what I want to talk about is the racist element to the Creation Museum and the fact that the true depiction of the color, the skin tone of the ancient people in the Bible, I do not believe was depicted accurately. And just about everyone in the Creation Museum was depicted as white. They definitely looked more on the pale side with the Caucasian hair, and it was just not enough representation of the black race. Now, we all know that black is dominant. Because of that, I don't understand why we're not depicting the Bible characters in the manner that is consistent with the Bible. The people in biblical times were black people. I don't even think white people existed at that time. And I believe that the Bible supports this idea that the people were of color. Now, I'm going to back up everything that I'm saying. I'm not trying to put white people down or say that, that they are not Elohim's people, because I do believe that he created us all. But I do think that when people have white skin, it is the result of sin. It is not the way that he created us. I think the original man had color. Adam was a ruddy color or a reddish brown, and he was not pale. He was not white. And I think that when we go to the Bible and we read what it says, it will give you the impression that white was not really the color that the ancient people were. In the Bible, white skin was depicted as either a curse, you are cursed with white skin by Elohim, or it was a disease. The only times the Bible speaks of white skin is being a curse or it's a disease. Oftentimes when you hear about leprosy, many times we're taught it was limbs falling off, scabs or wounds on your body. That's what we're told leprosy is. But that's simply not true, because the Bible tells us that leprosy was when the skin turned white. So I'm just going to bring out some scriptures that is proving what I'm saying, and the fact that we are actually breaking the commandments when we're depicting these ancient people as being white when they were not. This is not a racist video. This is just simply factual based off the scriptures. So let's look at some of the scriptures and see where I'm coming from with this. Before I do that, I just want to talk about my experience. I did not see Not one black worker at the Creation Museum. Now, I could have been there at a time where maybe they were just not working, but I just didn't see any. And I did not necessarily feel welcome at the Creation Museum either. When I drove up to the parking, the lady who collects the money for parking, I did not feel welcome. She kind of just stared at me. She was a white lady, and she just kind of stared at me. She never said hi. She just kind of stared at me like, what is this black girl doing here? Why is she here? Okay, I didn't feel comfortable, but I'm like, I've driven all this long way. I'm not going back home. So I proceeded to go into the museum, and I could kind of already tell what I was in for. The workers at the Creation Museum, they were not overly friendly. Now, did anybody call me a nigger or call me any, racial slurs? None of that happened. No, that didn't happen. But it's a look. It's a look that sometimes white people can give you when you know they really don't want you there. And I felt the vibes like, black people, why are you here? I just didn't feel welcome. And it kind of extended inside the Creation Museum, like there were workers, and I guess they have people that work at the museum to give a tour of like the dinosaurs and maybe all over, but I just kind of walked myself around. Overall, I did not really feel welcome. Now, I'm not saying all of the workers there were rude. I don't think they were. There were some sincere people, like when I went to the Ark encounter, the lady who was working in the parking lot to collect the money, to park, she actually was a little bit more friendlier. I believe she greeted me, and she seemed more pleasant, and it seemed like it was more real, like she wasn't, doing it to be fake. As I went into the Creation Museum, the racism seemed to continue. It just wasn't a lot of black characters in the Bible. And I have a problem with that because people are saying like, it doesn't matter. Like, what should it matter? Well, if it doesn't matter, why can't you just put them in the color that the Bible says that they were? If it doesn't matter. And it's like, as long as he's white, it's okay. But as long as we say, okay, well, he was a black man, the Messiah was a black man. Oh, what does it matter? Okay, well, color does matter, because if he's cursing people with white skin, what is that telling us? It's telling us that it matters, that his original color was black. It was not like this pale color. So, I mean, if you say it doesn't matter, it's breaking the commandments. And I'm going to show in part 2 how all of the 10 commandments are being broken just from this live depicting these ancient people as picturing them as white. That is actually breaking all of the commandments, and they're proudly doing it. And we know that liars will not inherit the kingdom. So it's important because 1, you're breaking the commandments by lying about the skin color. And 2, it's important because it also identifies who Elohim's people are. Like, for instance, say if you have a child that is missing, or it could be an adult, just say someone is missing. And you say, well, the cops, the first thing they're going to ask you is, what do they look like? What race are they? Oh, it doesn't matter. What color is their hair? Oh, it doesn't matter. What color is their skin? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. How would you know what to look for? Are you looking for someone with brown skin, black skin? Do they have curly hair? Is it straight hair? It does matter. So to sit there and say that it doesn't matter, number one, you're not taking the commandment seriously. And even though it may seem insignificant, we're going to be accountable for everything, every word that is spoken. So I think that in all things, we need to tell the truth. So let's look at some of the scriptures and let's analyze them and see what the word is saying. In the book of Genesis, we read how Eve was deceived into eating the forbidden fruit. It says in Genesis that she listened to the serpent, and as a result, sin entered into the world. Now, as I observe the Creation Museum's display of the Garden of Eden, it appears to me that there is a second deceiving. As I observed the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter Museum, I was impressed with both. Like I said, much time and consideration went into making the exhibits that are displayed. It was very impressive. The Creation Museum did a great job at trying to convey the Bible stories into a real life experience. Now, Noah's Ark or the Ark Encounter was amazing on both the outside and the inside. However, like I said, I noticed that despite all of these good things, there was something noticeably absent from both of the museums. People of color were largely excluded from the majority of exhibits. The dominant race depicted in both museum exhibits were white people. Now, some might wonder, what difference does it make what color the people were in the exhibits, and why does it matter what color they were? Well, it does matter, and here's why. These depictions are proving a false narrative about the origins of our first parents on earth and misleading others to believe lies about our origins. The people who lived in ancient times that we read about in the Bible were people of color. They were Black people. And to show a white race of people as being the dominant race is dishonest. People of color have dominant traits, whereas lighter skin tones or white people have recessive traits. Whatever is dominant, such as Black skin, has to be the original. And recessive traits in skin colors, such as white skin, is the result of sin changing the natural order of things. White skin is the result of genetic disorders, disease, or sometimes a curse from Elohim. According to the Bible, white skin was an abnormality. In the Bible, we know that many times Hebrew people were mistaken to be Hamitic, or as we say today, African people. And we know that African people or Hamitic people have color. And if that's the case, that means that the descendants of Shem and Ham are similar in physical appearance. Now, here are some common places in the Bible where Hebrew people were mistaken to be Egyptian or African. In Exodus chapter 2, verses 16 through 19, Moses was mistaken to be an African or Egyptian. And it says, "Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel their father, he said, 'How is it that ye are come so soon today?' And they said, 'An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock.'" So here we can see that Moses, he was mistaken by foreigners to be an Egyptian or an African. Now we can also look in the New Testament at Paul, and we can look at Acts chapter 21, verses 37 through 39, where it says that Paul was mistaken to be an Egyptian, which once again we would call a modern day African. And it says, "And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, 'May I speak unto thee?' Who said, 'Canst thou speak Greek?' Art not thou that Egyptian, which before these days madest an uproar, and leddest out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?" But Paul said, "I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Cilicia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people." And also we can look at Joseph, who was also mistaken to be an Egyptian or an African. In Genesis chapter 42, Joseph's brothers went to buy corn in Egypt, and Joseph recognized his brothers, but his brothers didn't recognize him since he used an interpreter to speak with them. So we know that descendants of Ham and Shem were obviously similar in their physical appearance. Now you might be wondering, how do we know that the people in the Bible were Black? Well, we can know this quite simply by reading the Bible. According to the Bible, white skin was the result of a curse from Elohim or a disease. In all of Christendom, we have been taught that the biblical leprosy, it was scabs or it was a wound on the body. They taught us that leprosy, it was body parts and limbs falling off, but this is not what the biblical description of what leprosy was. Let's first examine what a leper is. A leper is from the Hebrew to separate, that is, spotted, broken into spots. Just like you see a leopard, it has spots. So likewise, when people have skin conditions like vitiligo, the skin turns into spots. It has parts still brown, and it also has spots of white. So it's like a leopard. The skin is separated into two different colors. But when we read the Bible, it tells us exactly what the leprosy was. In Numbers chapter 12, verse 10, Miriam, who is the sister of Moses, was struck with leprosy. It says in Numbers chapter 12, verse 10, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. There was nothing to indicate that these were sores or limbs falling off. It simply said her skin turned white. So I ask you this question: if her skin turned white after she was struck with leprosy, just what color was her skin before? And her brother Moses cried unto Yahuwah to heal her white skin. But it looks like Yah told Moses or Moshe, nah, let her stay white for at least 7 more days and then we'll see. And so it says also in Numbers chapter 12, verses 13 through 16, we can also see that he did heal her of her leprosy, which was her white skin. And it says, and Moshe cried unto El Yahuwah, saying, heal her now, O El, I beseech you. And Yahuwah said unto Moshe, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? So we see that he's equating her shame with having this white skin. This was a punishment. And he said, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that, let her be received in again. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. And afterward, the people removed from Ketzroth and pitched in the wilderness of Paran. So here we can see that Miriam was struck with leprosy, and it was a curse. It was a curse from Elohim. Now, also, let's look at the story of Naaman in 2 Kings 5:27. And this deals with Gehazi doing wrong, and he was cursed with the same leprosy that Naaman was healed from. But the interesting thing is not only that Gehazi was struck with leprosy that turned his skin white, but also it said his seed or his descendants will be struck with the curse of this white skin too. And who knows, this curse might be where white people come from. And maybe they chose to go to colder climates like Europe, where it's more conducive to their skin tone, because I believe all of Noah's 3 sons were all black: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay. Okay, so we know that Naaman had leprosy, and remember he had a maid or a servant who said that I know someone who can heal you of your leprosy. And again, leprosy that, in many churches in Christendom, they'll have sores and stuff, but it's clearly, it doesn't mention in the Bible anything about sores. So let's read about the leprosy of Naaman. In 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 27, it says, the leprosy, therefore, of Naaman shall cleave unto you and unto your seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. And this was talking about Gehazi. So again, we see that it says that the leprosy of Naaman shall cling unto Gehazi and unto his seed forever. Forever. So we see that this was a curse. White skin was a curse here. And he went out from the presence a leper as white as snow. Now, here we see no evidence that body parts were falling off. There's no indication that it was a scab or anything else. Their skin turned white as a curse. And the irony is that we've been taught by Christendom that blacks were a curse, when all the time it was really white skin that was the curse. And also, if we read at the beginning part of when Naaman was talked about, it seems like Naaman was healthy, other than the fact that his skin was white. Seemed like other than that, he was depicted as fine. So, his fingers and everything could not have been falling off. It wasn't scabs. It was just his skin was white. And also, one more example of leprosy turning white in the Torah is also Moses, or Moshe in Hebrew. So Moses' skin was also turned white with leprosy. And it says in Exodus chapter 4, verse 6, And it says, and Yahuwah said furthermore unto him, talking to Moses, put now your hand into your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again and plucked it out of his bosom, and behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. So if you want to claim that skin began white and then turned white with leprosy, how would you know the difference between the regular skin color and the leprosy if they are both the same color? So once again, if the people in the Bible's skin were white and then they were cursed with white skin, how would you be able to tell that they had leprosy if their skin was white and then he cursed it to turn white? I mean, how does that make sense? So you're saying that the Bible character's skin is white and then it turns white with leprosy. It doesn't make sense. The only thing that logically makes sense is that this original skin color was brown, and then when it was cursed, it was turned white. That's the only way that it makes sense. So it makes sense, because if you want to say, why does it matter? Well, why aren't these scenes ever depicted in the Ten Commandments? Like with Charlton Heston playing Moses. They never showed those parts in the movie where the skin was cursed with leprosy with Miriam or Moses. So if you're not able to tell the full story accurately because you're lying, then that's because you're breaking the commandments. And this is why it's important. It's important for that reason. And also we can see that it was obvious that Moses, Miriam, and Namaan, and also Joseph, were all black people. And when I look at the Creation Museum, I see active racism. You actually are taking a sinful nature, which is the white skin, and making it appear as if this is normal. You're normalizing a skin defect and basically lying about the original skin color of our ancestors, and that's violating the commandments. It says, thou shalt not bear false witness in the 9th commandment. It says not to lie. So if you are lying about the skin color, you are breaking the commandments. In part 2, I'm going to show how all of the commandments are being broken just from this lie. And all Christendom, they keep doing this, and they act like it's insignificant. If it doesn't matter, let's paint them and put them in the original color that they actually were. Anything else, it's a lie. And that's violating the commandments. I'm going to continue with a part 2. I'm going to analyze the Ark encounter. And I also want to say that with the Creation Museum, I was really angry. And I didn't take pictures, which I probably should have, where they were talking. They had a wall where they were depicting what sin had done to humanity. And so they had pictures of the Holocaust, and they had, you know, the swastika sign and all that stuff. And I said to myself, you know, this felt racist to me, because I said, here in America, the Holocaust, if that happened, was in Germany. That wasn't even on American soil. And I said to myself, now here we have one of the worst evils in history, which is the enslavement of black people from the transatlantic slave trade brought over from West Africa. My ancestors were brought here on slave ships, okay? Mistreated, raped, beaten, murdered. And I said, for this museum to only focus on the Holocaust as being the sin, I said, this is racist. Here, the enslavement of black people from the transatlantic slave trade is one of the worst evils in the history of America. And you don't even have a wall dedicated to not one thing from the transatlantic slave trade. Now, I admire Ken Ham for doing this museum, but this is racist and it's wrong. And the thing is, the Holocaust, what happened for 4 or 5 years and it ended? The Holocaust against black people, we were set on fire. We had our homes set on fire. We were set on fire, hung from trees. And for you to ignore all of this painful history right here on the very same country that you have your museum, to ignore that, that is really just saying you don't care. You don't care about how we're treated today. You don't care how we were treated in history. And your racism is showing. How can these Christians who are white say that they love Elohim, who they have not seen, and they hate their black and brown brothers and sisters. The people in the Holocaust were not the only people that suffered. I am not a racist. I do not hate white people. All I hate is when people tell lies. And I just feel that if the Bible had these people depicted as black, and I could go on, I could find even more verses to prove that these people were people of color. But this is enough to prove my point that the original biblical people were people of color. So please stay tuned. I have a part 2 that's coming up, and may y'all bless you. And remember to be honest. Even if it's little small things, still be honest. That's integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing. And it is inconsistent with Bible scriptures to say that we as Christians should tell the truth and then you turn around and you lie. And this is all that I'm saying. This is breaking the commandments. So part 2, I'm going to talk about Noah's Ark or the Ark encounter. And I will deal with the fact that they are breaking all 10 of the commandments. Shalom, may peace be unto you.